Alright, here we go. Like they say, grease is the word. At least that's what I hear. But anyways, let's get started now. I just want to go over two quick review problems to get us started, to get us kind of warmed up, to get us into today's lesson. So if you want to, go ahead and open up your notebooks and copy down at least problem number 1 right now. So 4x squared y times 2x cubed y squared. Now, the first thing you need to take care of here are your big numbers out in front, or your coefficients. Now, these guys follow the rules of the operation of the problem. And in this problem, the operation is multiplication. So you're going to multiply your two big numbers, or the two coefficients up front. So I'm going to take the 4 and the 2, multiply those two guys together, and get 8. Now is where I focus in on the variables. And you take your time. You do one at a time. So, for example, I'm going to act like this y is not here and just focus on my x. Focus on my x. Now, like we learned last week, since we're multiplying, we're going to add the exponents of our x's. So I'm just going to write it out as if we knew what we were doing all along. So x squared and x to the third, you add your exponents, 2 plus 3 is 5. Take a look at your y's. Now remember, if you can't see an exponent there, there is really one there. It is invisible, and that exponent is actually a 1. So you just add your 1 plus 2 to get 3. So 4x squared y times 2x cubed y squared really is 8x to the 5th y to the 3rd. And again, remember, since we're multiplying, you're going to add your exponents. And then also last week we talked about dividing monomials. So here again I have 18, a to the 3rd, b squared, c to the 5th, divided by 3a, b squared, c to the squared. So go ahead and copy that down in your notebook. I'll give you a second to do that. Okay, so just like in a previous problem, you're going to take care of those big numbers out in front, the 18 and the 3, your coefficients. So you're going to, again, follow the rules of the operation of the problem. Well, this is a division problem, so I'm going to divide my big numbers. Okay, so 18 divided by 3 is 6. Now again, all I do is I focus in on each variable one at a time. So focus in on your A's, then do your B's, then do your C's. So in this case, I'm going to do 3, a to the 3rd, and a to the 1st. So, because I am dividing, that means I really subtract my exponents, and that becomes a squared. Now, like Ms. Tacoma talked about last week, here we have b squared and b squared. Well, if we were to line those out, and I'll put it over here, if I had b squared on top over b squared on the bottom, you can kind of cancel them out and they disappear. Well, same thing here. 2 minus 2 is 0. They go away. So I no longer have b's on my problem. And then finally, take a look at your c's. 5 minus 2 is 3. So my final answer there is c a squared, c to the 3rd. Okay? So that's just kind of a quick review of what we talked about last week. Now let's take a look at today's lesson. So today's lesson is all about raising a power to a power. So if you want to, go ahead and write that in your notebook along with the next problem we're about to do here. Okay, so copy down the following. This is 7 squared raised to the power of 6. So, what this means is I'm going to take 7 squared and multiply it by itself 6 times. So in other words, it would be like saying 7 squared times 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 7 squared. And if you want to back that up even further, now this part you don't have to write down. It would be like saying 7 times 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 7, because that's what 7 squared means. And how many times am I multiplying 7 by itself? Well, if you count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Or if we learned from what we did last week, here I'm multiplying the same base by the same exponent. It'd be like writing 7, 2, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, which really works out to be 7, and I'm adding 6 sets of 2, so that's like saying 6 times 2, or 7 to the 12th power. Now, for your notes or for your homework or for the test, we're not expecting you to write it out long ways like this. You'll kind of get what's going on within this problem or the next problem, okay? But I just wanted to show you where this multiplication is coming from, how we're taking the exponent and raising it to a power by multiplying these two numbers here. So multiplying 2 times 6. So take a look at the next problem. And this problem we're not going to do right out the long way. So here I have 1.3 times 1.3 to the third power, then raised to the power of 10. Okay? So again, what this really means is 1.3, so go ahead and write this down. Take your exponents, multiply them together. So we're going to take my two exponents because I'm raising a power to a power. It's a repeated multiplication here, so that is going to be 1.3 to the 30th power. Okay, so you can see how this is different from last week. Last week we were adding our exponents. Well, now we're going to be multiplying our exponents when we're raising a power to a power. So go ahead and write the following down in your notebook, and here's kind of the rule for raising a power to power. So if I have x to the m power, I'm going to raise it to the n power. All I'm going to do now is just multiply my exponents by each other. So this is just going to be xm times n. And the toughest thing for you guys probably to get is just kind of to separate in your minds from what we talked about last week and what we're talking about this week. Because all we're doing now is just multiplying our exponents out. Okay? So now what I'd like you to do is go to your packets and go to lesson 3, which is page 11 in your packets. So we'll do a few of these together. You'll do a few on your own, and then we'll go from there. So you can see on page 11, they give you the rule here. So here you can see xm raised to the power of n is just xn times m. They go through how that happens, but we're just going to kind of move on from there. So let's take a look at the first few exercises. Now again, I'm going to write these out long ways. Again, for your homework, for the test, we're not expecting to do that, but I just want to emphasize the fact that we are multiplying our exponents. So take a look at number 1. Here we have 15 to the third raised to the power of 9. So this would actually mean, so go ahead and write this down, 15 raised to the 3 times 9, which just works out to be 15 to the 27th. Okay, take a look at number 2. So here we have negative 2 to the 5th power raised to the power of 8, which really is negative 2 raised to the power of 5 times 8. And, you know, if you know your multiplications table, this goes fairly quickly. If you need to use the calculator, feel free. Which this is going to be negative 2 to the 40th power. Okay, go on and head over here to exercise 3. Again, you're probably catching on at this point. All we're doing is simply multiplying the exponents. In fact, go ahead. I'm going to hit pause. Go ahead and do 3 and 4 real quick. Okay, so you can see here I've got my answers here. And again, it's just the same thing. I'm going to take my exponents and multiply them together. So 3.4 raised to the power of 17 times 4, which is 3.4 raised to the power of 68. Okay, take a look at number 4. Now, just because we're dealing with a variable, it's the same thing. Same properties are involved here. Just take your exponents, multiply them together. 17 times 4 is 68, so we're taking s and raising it to the power of 68. Okay. Now, in looking at exercise 5, now you can see here is a common mistake. You can see Sarah wrote 3 to the 5th raised to the power of 7. She's got an answer of 3 to the 12th. Well, her mistake is she added her exponents. And that's a common mistake because you talked about adding the exponents last week, but that's only when we're multiplying monomials. Here, we're taking a monomial and raising it to a power. So you have to multiply your exponent. So in this case, it would be 3 to the 5th raised to the power of 7 is 3, 5 times 7, which equals 3 to the 35th power. Okay, we're going to skip the second part there of the question. We're going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so take a look at now the next page. The next page now we're dealing with more than one term inside our parentheses. So in this case, it's now going to be like doing the distribution property, which we talked about in the fall. So again, I'm going to draw my Angry Birds or draw my arrows to get our answer. I'm going to show you what I mean here with exercise 7. So please follow along and please copy down these notes because this is important here. So 11 times 4 raised to the power of 9. So what I have to do is I have to take this 9 and actually distribute to everything inside the parentheses. So what that's going to turn out to be is 11 to the 9th power times 4 to the 9th power. Again, notice how the 9 affects everything inside the parentheses. Now let's take a look at exercise 8. Okay. Again, if you want to draw your arrows, it helps. So don't be afraid to again do it. So I'm going to take the 8, or the 5 that's the exponent, apply it to the 3 squared, and also apply it to my 7 to the 4th. So that's going to end up being 3, 2 times 5 as an exponent, times 7, 4 times 5, which again, to write that out, is 3 to the 10th times 7 to the 20th. Okay. So again, exercise 9, here we're dealing with some variables, but still the same thing. You want to distribute your power out here to all of the exponents inside the parentheses. Now remember, if you don't see an exponent, it's really there. It's just 1, but in this case, I don't have to worry about it. So in this case, I'm going to take 3 with an exponent 2 times 5, then bring your next term, which is the a, 4 times 5. There's my distribution. And then I'm going to rewrite this as 3 to the 10th, a to the 20th. Okay, so go ahead and do exercise 10, 11, and 12 on your own. Go ahead and hit pause, and when you're done, go ahead and check your answers. So go ahead and hit pause. Okay, so if you go ahead and check your answers, one of the things that some of you might have done where you've gotten the answer wrong is maybe you forgot to take the 7 and distribute to the 5 as well as the x. So it's going to be 5 to the 7th, x to the 7th, because they both have an exponent of 1. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 7 is 7 as well. Take a look at number 11. Again, distribute your 7 to all the terms inside the parentheses, so it's going to be 5 to the 7th times x to the 7th, and then 7 times 2 is 14. And the last one, distribute your 4, so 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 3 is 12. So hopefully you got those correct. Okay, and finally the last problem here, it says how is x over n raised to the power of n related to xn and yn? Well, just because this is a fraction, you still have to do the same thing. You have to take your n and distribute it to everything on the top as well as everything on the bottom. So this answer would end up being x to the n over y to the n. Okay, you'll see problems like this as we get a little bit more complicated in the near future. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is go ahead and write the following in your notebook. Okay, so last thing you're going to do today is just write these 3 properties down in your notebook so you can kind of differentiate between the 3 of them. Okay, so we have our multiplying monomials. Here, when you're multiplying monomials, multiplying the terms, you would add your exponents. Here's a nice example to include in your notebook. Dividing monomials, okay, here's an example. You would subtract your exponents. And again, here's a good example for your notebook. And then finally, what we talked about today, raising a power to a power, you're going to multiply your exponents by each other. So x to the m raised to the power of n really just means xm times n. And again, here is another example to go ahead and copy down in your notebook. Okay. So when you're done copying this, just raise your hand and tell your teacher that you're done so you can receive the next assignment. Okay. Thanks and good luck.